public static void in string array args. So I am going to take only three instructions inside the main method. System dot out dot println. Let us say that this is statement 1, something like statement 1. Let me copy and paste it. So this is instead of writing something, let me generate an exception. I am just saying 10 divided by 0. And again here statement 3. So I have taken a simple Java code and I have taken a main method. In the main method, there are only three statements. Right? Statement 1, statement 2, statement 3. Let us understand how the execution will be terminated abnormally, because I have deliberately placed a code that is potential enough to generate an exception. So when I start compiling this code, so this is the code that is written in Notepad. Just assume that this code is written in a Notepad, right? After this, I need to perform the compilation. For that, I need compiler, a small compiler, right? What compiler will do? Compiler will find, or compiler will check for any errors. If the code is error free, it will generate .class file. We know that already. Compiler, right? The code is error free, it is going to generate .class file. Now you must understand, here I have placed an exception. I have placed a code that is potential enough to generate an exception. This is the code that I have placed. But still it will be compiled successfully, because this will come under the category of unchecked exception. So compiler will not check whether this code is generating any exception or not. This compiler will not consider this case, because this is unchecked exception. So that's why the compilation will be smooth, even though we know that this code will create the runtime exception, but compiler will not understand, or compiler will just perform the compilation, because this exception is something like unchecked exception. I don't think any expression is required, right? So during the runtime, as soon as the code is fed into the JVM, as soon as the .class file is fed into the JVM, so this is the JVM. JVM is nothing but Java Virtual Machine, which is responsible to execute the code. Java Virtual Machine. As soon as the .class file is fed into the JVM, so let us write that as well. So this is what? Test.java. Test.java will be sent to compiler. Compiler will generate test.class. And the test.class file will be loaded into the JVM. This file will be loaded into the JVM, and JVM will execute. JVM will start executing the code, and as the execution starts, a main thread will be created. Main thread will get access to the main method. So this is the main method, right? So all the instructions inside the main method will be executed sequentially. So first instruction, the output is going to be what? Output is guessable. So statement 1 is going to be the first instruction, first output. Statement 1. So as soon as the JVM encounters this statement, there will be an arithmetic exception, right? So usually we expect, as a developer, we expect all the instructions in the main method to get executed, isn't it? This is our expectation. Our expectations is like all the instructions in the main method has to get executed, right? But unfortunately, an exception occurred in the second line of the main method, the second instruction of the main method, right? So what happens if the exception occurs? the JVM will not execute, will not proceed further with the remaining execution. The execution will be stopped here. What does it mean? The execution will be stopped here, and the unfortunately the program will be terminated here, and this third instruction will never be executed. Right? This is supposed to get executed. This could be an important statement. This could be an important instruction. This could be an important instruction as the part of the code. But this statement or this instruction is not executed because exception occurred before that. Right? It's a big drawback, and we call this situation as what? We call this as abnormal termination. Abnormal termination. So, if you ask me whether the abnormal termination is really good for us or not, definitely it is not a good, because there might be many number of instructions that is supposed to, that is designed to get executed, but all those instructions will be left unexecuted. The program will be terminated abnormally. Then who is responsible for this abnormal termination? We can say, okay, JVM is responsible for the abnormal termination, but what made the JVM to terminate the program abnormally? Error code. This is error code, right? This is error code. This is something that made the JVM to do the abnormal termination, right? So this is something that a code has been written without handling code. If a Java code is drafted, if a Java code is designed in such a way without any handling code, this is a code. This is a code that is designed without handling code for an exception. So this case might not be what we call it as this case. We can accept this case because the output is going to be statement 1 and exception, and the expected statement is statement 3, right? So in the real time, we might encounter the situation in a different way. Like the first statement can be, open a DB connection. First statement can be what? Open DB connection. This is database. Keep the connection open. So we are trying to like statement 1 is nothing but the statement 1 says please open the DB connection. So in this case I am writing I am opening the DB connection. Okay, DB connection open. Second statement, in the real time, if I am saying the second statement, if I am trying to do an operation which is read data from this DB. Second statement is what? Read data from the DB. My second instruction is coded in such a way that it is going to read data from this particular DB. Sounds good, right? What if the exception occurs in the second instruction? Just imagine the exception occurred here, right? And the third statement, and again I am just the third statement is anticipated like close the DB connection. So the connection that is open needs to be closed. Third statement, close the DB connection, right? So if the exception occurred in the second statement, we cannot close the DB connection, right? This will be this instruction will never get executed because the exception occurred previously in the previous statement. So this DB connection will be open, it will remain open forever. This DB connection will be it will be opened forever, right? Because of the because the termination is abnormal and termination occurred in the second statement. In the second statement, there is a instruction that is throwing an error, throwing an exception. Because of that exception, the main thread will not proceed to the third statement. And the third statement is very important, which is like it has to close the DB connection. Since the program got terminated here, do you think that DB connection will be closed? The DB connection will be open, it will remain open, right? If it happens for one program, just imagine that we have a DB, we have a common DB, and if you repeat, if it keeps happening for many users, so this is user 2, user 2 also open the DB, user 3 also open the DB, and user 4 also open the DB, and user 5 also open the DB. For all the users, the exception occurred in the while reading the statement. For all the users, the DB connection will remain open forever, right? And there will be a threshold for this. I mean, you can have a few number of users on a given at a given point of time. Only like at given point of time, let us say that there can be at least 80 users at a given point of time to keep the DB connection open. If all the 80 connections, all the 80 users are found to be having the open DB connection without having it closed, then if the 81th person is coming to open the DB, it will not accept. The resource will not. The application is going to behave weirdly. The application is going to crash, isn't it? So that's why it is very imperative to handle the exceptions by by ensuring that the particular, by making sure or by making sure that the particular risky code is handled properly, right? So this is something that we have written without handling this exception. The code has been drafted, and this is what the outcome is. Outcome is what? Something the DB is going to crash because the new resources or new users cannot get access to the DB because all the existing users DB connection were found to be opened because of this exception, right? So how do I handle this exception? So let us say that if I'm trying to take the same program, let me take the same program. Now here what I am doing is with handling code. I'm using a code to handle that exception. To handle that exception, I'm going to use a code. Create same program, class, test, public, static, void, main, string, array, aux, some dot out dot println statement statement 1. So we before proceeding further, so there is we must understand how the try and catch block is often used to handle the exception, right? What the program says, if you find any risky code, if you feel that a code is going to generate an exception, in this case, when we are talking about a risky code, what is a risky code? This is a risky code. 10 by 0, 10 upon 0. This is the risky code, right? Because it is going to generate an exception. If you feel that a code is going to generate an exception, put that code in the try block, right? Put this code in a block by the name of try. Put this in the try block. In this case, this is a risky code, so I am taking this risky code inside the try block, right? If at all this code is going to generate an exception, if at all this code is going to generate an exception, use the catch block to handle that exception. So in this case, A try catch block, a try block will be followed by a catch block. This catch block will handle that exception. If the exception is generated, this catch block is going to handle that exception. Right? System dot out dot println. Here you just write what exception handled. Right? When I'm saying, if you find any code, any risky code, put that code in the try block. Right? If at all this code is going to generate an exception, 10 by 0, obviously it will generate the exception, isn't it? So the control will go to the catch block, and the instruction in the catch block will be handled, will be displayed in the output, or will be handled as an alternate code. If this code is generating exception, it will look for the alternate code in the catch block. Catch block will have the alternate code or the handling code, we can say. Right? So in this case, even though the exception is generated over here, the control will not stop. The control will jump to the catch block. This instruction will be executed, and remaining instructions will be executed as per the sequence that is as per the instructions that is available in the main method. Right? So same thing I am going to take here. How to handle with handling code is nothing but put the threatening code or risky code, or the code that is potential enough to generate an exception in the try block. Right? If at all it is going to generate an exception, the control will go to catch block, and there will be no abnormal termination. Instead, the instructions in the catch block will be executed, following which the remaining code will be executed normally without any abnormal termination. This is what it does mean when you say that when you handle an exception with handling code. This is what it means. This is one of the handling code, like by using try catch block. Right? Previously we have seen without any handling code. Without any handling code in the sense abnormal termination. The exception has occurred in the statement 2. Then the statement 3, or the instructions or the code that is after the exception is not going to get executed. Because of that, we will face number of problems and abnormal termination. Abnormal termination is highly not at all recommended in Java, because with abnormal termination there are high chances that you will lose resources. Some resources will not get closed properly. There are chances that the remaining resource will be open, and it may consume a lot of data source. Right? So it is always recommended to close the program gracefully. I mean, the termination should be normally. In order to do that, we need to ensure that the code that is going to generate an exception is covered with the try block, so that if the exception is generated, the control will go to the catch block and the exception can be handled easily, and there will be no problem for the execution of the remaining statements. Right? So if I write this program, if I just try to generate an output with let me write this program in a notepad. So this is what we call it as a customized exception handling. One of the customized exception handling in Java. Customized exception handling is nothing but how an end user, how a developer is going to handle an exception. So my notepad is not responding. Okay, let it be. We will discuss these examples tomorrow.